Good evening, Jeopardy fans, and we are live here on the hashtag Jeopardy Live panel presented by thejeopardyfan.com. Once again, and as always, I am Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion of hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. So I'm going to introduce our panelists just quickly off the top. First up, as always, I introduce in order of when you were first on the panel. So first up, my first introduction tonight, welcome back to hashtag Jeopardy Live panel, Matt Carberry. He's been on a couple times already, and I've lost count of the number of times you've been on, but welcome back.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be back as always. It has been only twice, first during the tournament of panelists and then once earlier this season, but number three, always great to be here.
Oh, thank you once again for joining us. And also on hashtag or Jeopardy Live panel this evening, our first, or I should say, he won a pair of games last week and is here to talk with us about his experiences. Welcome, Lee Quinn.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate the call.
Okay, so as always here on hashtag Jeopardy Live panel, if you've got a question or a comment for our panel, you can use the hashtag Jeopardy Live panel on Twitter. You can also use the YouTube live chat we've got going here. As you can also tell, we've got some new technology going here, so that could be interesting. Let me know what you think of it if you're listening. I'm working with things a little bit differently here. We'll see what happens. So my first announcement before we get into the questioning, I announced this earlier this evening, and certainly the 2017 the Jeopardy Fan Andy Awards, the nominations have just opened for that, so that should be fun. You can nominate your favorite moments in 7 different categories. That is overall contestant, non-winning contestant, tournament contestant, hashtag Jeopardy Live panel panelist, favorite moment, favorite interview, and favorite episode. There were no celebrity games last year, so we can't do the nomination for favorite celebrity this year, but if they do come back with Celebrity Jeopardy, we can do that again in the future. But nominations are now open at thejeopardyfan.com. So let's get back to now that you've heard that, and now that you've had the opportunity to take a look at that and the categories, let's get into the discussion of this past week's episodes a little bit. My first question actually is kind of just for Lee, because it's kind of become my opening question, as it were, here on the panel. But it seems like most Jeopardy fans have an origin story, as it were, because there was that moment where you became a Jeopardy fan in the first place. So, and I think most contestants are fans as well. So, from that perspective, Lee, how did you become a Jeopardy fan?
I don't remember exactly. I couldn't pinpoint the moment. Probably, growing up, it was on and I liked watching it, and it was, interesting, and I would try to compete with the grown-ups who were on and see if I could do well and keep up with them. And then, in college, it kind of became part of our evening routine of watching. We would always watch The Simpsons, and then Jeopardy came on right after where we were, and it sort of became part of the routine. Then I sort of fell out of watching and being kind of attuned to what's happening in Jeopardy, and then sort of back and forth and back and forth. And I actually hadn't watched for a bit when I got a call a couple of months ago from the Jeopardy folks, and then sort of got back more into the muscle memory of watching and getting used to the terminology of the game. So I guess for a long time ago, but in fits and starts ever since.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Now, if I remember reading correctly on Reddit, I think you mentioned that you tried out quite a while ago, like back in 2015. Is that correct?
Yeah, my in-person audition was in June of 2015 in Atlanta, and so when you do the in-person audition, they tell you we'll call you or we won't in the next 18 months. Thanks, goodbye. and that's sort of all you hear. And I kind of forgot about it after 18 months, and I thought, well, maybe this is not my time. And so when they called me, it was the end of September of 2017. So it had been a full 2 years and 2.25 years. So it was a real surprise to get the call. Yeah, I think most of the folks in my contestant pool had been in an in-person audition within the year, certainly within 12 months. And so yeah, there's between my audition and my call.
Well, I definitely think that's interesting. I mean, I Lindsay Resnick, actually, she was on last week's panel. I later discovered her audition was even earlier than yours. She was back. I think she was in Savannah, actually, back in April off the 2014 set of online tests. So her journey may have been even longer than yours to the show, but
I had a funny story from that audition, actually. I found out a few weeks ago, as it was becoming sort of news that I was going to be on the show, that a former student of mine was in the room adjacent to mine auditioning at the same time, and we didn't know it at all until he came and said, "Hey, were you there then?" And what space were you in, and all that stuff. So kind of a serendipitous thing that turns out one of my former students was just on the other side of the wall auditioning at the same time as me.
now you are an IB teacher. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I'm an IB teacher, and I also help coordinate the IB program in my school. So I have both roles.
Okay. So it definitely seems like, at least from what I saw, a lot of your past students seem to be very happy that you were doing well on the show, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's been one of the great things about it, is just getting reconnected with former students. And here, I've got over probably 2,000 or more former students now, and where they are around the country and around the world, and getting to reestablish communication with them and find out, the great things that they're up to has been a really, really positive aspect of this whole thing. And, my job doesn't have a lot of immediate gratification. So getting to hear 5, 10, 15, even years down the road, what my students are up to was always wonderful.
Okay, so that is quite nice. Yes, so absolutely, for sure. So moving on a little bit, it was an interesting week of shows. I would say story number one was Gilbert's 1% promise to his kids. So how did that go over in the bullpen, as it were, when you were hearing that stuff? And how was Gilbert in person?
I think Gilbert's great. He's a brilliant guy, obviously, and I think many nights would have gotten the better of me, just given the categories I got lucky with. But he's really humble, really generous and kind guy, and he's we had a lot of fun just kind of because we're together in the green room and together in the well, he wasn't with us in the audience, obviously, because he was playing the whole time until our game. And I just have a lot of positive things to say about Gilbert. I'm looking forward to him making a big run in the Tournament of Champions for sure. But it was really fun to meet him and hang out with him and all the other folks too. And so yeah, it was his story about not only his story about his kids. I think Alex asked me if I have any kids. I do have a 4.5-year-old son, but I didn't tell that part to him. He didn't pick up on the fact that Gilbert's kids got some money, so we'll let him know about that later. Yeah, Gilbert was great, and I was actually trying to reconnect with him, and maybe he and I can collaborate on some grilling and smoking of meats sometime down the road. If I ever make it up to New Jersey, or if he comes down here.
That sounds like it would be a lot of fun, for sure. Now,
yeah.
So what was your perspective on the ringworm reversal, as it were, from Tuesday's game?
Yeah, so we were. I mean, obviously, I was there in the bullpen, as you say, right on the side of the audience, and we didn't know what was happening at the time because the break before the final Jeopardy clue was given is sort of as long as it needs to be, right? The break is, you've got within reason as much time as you need to make a wager. So at first, I kind of thought, well, maybe someone's just taking a really long time making a wager because it was a tight game with he and David. And then we saw a bunch of people conferring at the judges table and some people conferring up at the podiums, and then they hit the little button to reset everyone's wagers. And only when they announced it in the studio did we realize what was happening, because it was probably about a 10-minute delay, that the judges had made a correction and had given Gilbert that money back, and everyone had to reset their wagers in light of that new total. So we didn't really know what was happening until right before they announced the clue. It seemed like, I don't have a background in health and disease. Certainly Gilbert does, but certainly, and I thought they handled it really fairly on set, as far as letting the contestants have plenty of time to wager and sort of get their bearings and consider the situation as it arose.
Now, what was your perspective, Matt, as a fan watching that, watching the Daily Double and then watching Alex, make the announcement?
Well, I didn't initially think anything suspect on that clue when the Daily Double was played out. I didn't know that ringworm was was an alternative term for tinea pedis. But just shortly after the show, as soon as one click to Wikipedia, so I'm like, oh, okay, ringworm foot, yeah, that's a fair reversal, no problem with that at all. And it seemed like there were some sporadic reactions to the contrary, which I thought to be quite unfortunate. But on any judge's ruling, you're gonna get the gamut of reactions from full agreement to full disagreement, and some of those reactions are come from the perspective of not being aware of those discussions that go on at the judges table and what's in the Jeopardy rulebook. And so it's frustrating to watch, but it's part of the work that that the big fans and the former players as well that we do on a nightly basis, trying to educate people on what goes into the rule book, and what goes into those rulings and how they come out, however they come out, whether they go in favor of the player or they don't. And particularly, I would say, Andy probably, I've said this in the comment section, that Andy probably knows the rule book better than anybody who has, other than those who have worked on the show or played it. So that contribution, I always think of it as much appreciated. But to me, as soon as I saw something that could connect ringworm to tinea pedis, it was an open and shut case for me, and I had no problem with it, and thus Gilbert going on to win.
Mm-hmm. Because there were certainly a lot of people who weren't so happy about it. But again, I saw right away, like within 5 seconds of Googling, I saw it. Certainly right away that ringworm tinea pedis, no problem whatsoever. So of course, Gilbert's just won his 5th game, and you get called to play. You get called to play him, Lee. So, what's going through your head at that point?
Honestly, I was really hoping to play the middle game that day. Just, I didn't want to be first and I didn't want to be last. So I was actually quite glad to be in the middle, and I was quite glad to go against a champion as established as Gilbert, because I felt like if this is my one shot, I want to go against someone who's really good and see how well I can do. So I was pretty excited for both reasons, that I wanted to go right then in the middle of the day, and that I wanted to go against a great champion and see how I could fare against him. So I was actually quite happy about it.
And of course, I would say, judging by your performance, game number 1 hit you very well in terms of the content.
Right. I mean, I was quite fortunate with the categories and the timing of the buzzer and a lot of that stuff. The categories and the buzzer can giveth and taketh away, certainly. But I was quite fortunate with the categories that came up, because my background is as a history teacher. So a lot of that stuff is quite familiar to me. So it was a matter of just ringing in on time. And even the final Jeopardy clue, which was a bit moot at the time, was really an American history question. At its core, it wasn't really about holidays directly, So I felt really fortunate about the category, certainly in that game.
Now, with regards to Wednesday, because they certainly, I know your area of the continent certainly had some weather issues last week. How much of a
Right.
relief was it that your local affiliate decided to break away from its weather coverage to show Jeopardy?
So they decided to break away at 6:59 is when they broke away. And apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently there's a number of senior members of our community who are quite vocal on the telephone to our local affiliates whenever Jeopardy and or Wheel of Fortune get preempted by any sort of coverage whatsoever. So they were already on it. I think that they weren't necessarily on it on my behalf. They were just wanted their evening ritual to go undisturbed. So I think the senior members of our community had laid a groundwork for many times before of calling in to make sure that happened. And then I just kind of checked with them briefly or earlier in the day just on Twitter, and they never responded, which was fine. And I could tell when the commercials changed that they were going to switch back to regular programming, but we did have a backup plan. But it was going to be switched to a different digital over-the-air channel. I had a digital antenna ready because the watch party, my first two plans for watch parties didn't pan out because of the weather. And so the third plan was to watch in my house, and my neighbors walked over to watch, and we just kind of, it was really low key with about a dozen kids running around. And so we had a backup plan. So luckily the affiliate did switch over literally about 40 seconds early before the show came on.
Yeah, it definitely sounded. I mean, I could see the relief from various people in Raleigh on Twitter myself.
Yeah, they were on my side. I think a lot of those were former colleagues or current colleagues or students. So I've got a number of people who had my back on that, whether they knew it or not.
So this is my next question is something I don't really think we've covered in too much detail here on Live Panel, but I would say most of the games in 2018 before yours had trouble getting through all 61 clues, and then Tuesday's game was okay, and then all three of your games got through all the clues. So I think that the last three certainly had a lot to do with how quickly you were playing. So can you speak to that at any length about what tips you might want give to people who might be looking to improve how quickly they play Jeopardy, as it were?
Yeah, that's a good question. I certainly think both the categories that I was more fortunate to run were categories with really short clues. The presidential burial places were just the name of a town, and the banners were just an image and a quick description. So obviously that helps. But I talk quickly. I was trying to use an economy of words for calling the next clue. Maybe I used too much of an economy. I probably interrupted Alex a few times or talked over him. So I think, and I was reading the clues quickly enough where I knew where I wanted to go next. I didn't have a lot of hesitation as to where I wanted to go. So I tried to pay close attention when the categories were announced. So I got a sense of what they were about and where I wanted to go if I got control of the board. So I think that combined with just trying to use an economy of words when calling for the next clue will certainly help move things along.
Yeah, prior to that Tuesday game, the last game that had all 61 clues played was December 29th. So we started the year with 11 straight games with some clues being left on the board. In some cases, it's in the $6,000 and $7,000 range in terms of the valuation of those clues before the 4 Tuesday through Friday last week. So it was definitely noticeable, and I would say a welcome change to see that Gus getting through all 61. The economy of words, it can be sometimes it does lead to things like what Brandon had to deal with, that kind of a backlash.
Yes.
where people
Mhm.
get that the economy becomes so low that people think he's not
Yes.
properly phrasing, and I
Right.
think that was, you know, it seemed like this week that wasn't as much of a case.
Right, and I think some of that is certainly if anyone were to not phrase properly, that we would be called out on it and caught on it, and maybe some of that sound editing to trim down the broadcast. But you're right. You know, there's times when I know that I was really quick to make a contraction of a couple of words to get the answer out quickly and try and move on because I was trying to uncover as many clues as possible. But yeah, I think had I slipped up and not done that, I certainly would and should have been called out on it. So the judges are right on top of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely 100%. That's exactly what happens. They are, they've got pretty much every single writer and the floor director and the standards and practices guy would all be like, he missed his phrasing.
Yep.
That would be, it when the phrasing is missing, it stands out like a sore thumb, and everybody notices
Yep.
it right away.
Yes.
Yeah, and anything that can be, anything that contestants do to get through all the clues is something that it can. I mean, you can think of it. It leads to some has led to some great moments recently in the show. I mean, 2016 college championship final game one. Nikki Peters coming from however far down she was and just reeling off clue after clue after clue, and part of that was going right from her answer right into the next clue.
Yeah, I agree. I think that can help you get into a rhythm too. That can help you get into a rhythm of
Exactly.
buzzing in. It can help you get into a rhythm of sort of thought pattern, and if you can keep it going, then it really kind of works out for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving on slightly, um, going from, of course, you're the champion, you've won Wednesday, and you get the opportunity to have lunch on Sony's dime at the commissary. So, what did you have for lunch?
Yeah, I had a turkey sandwich. It's funny, so much of that day was a blur to me, but I remember I got a turkey sandwich, and Glenn Kagan, who was the senior contestant coordinator, was with us going into the commissary, and he's like trying to get us to eat more. He's like our grandmother or whatever, because I think they're trying to make sure everyone gets fed well. And it was nice at a lunch break after my first game. So yeah, I got like a turkey sandwich and some chips maybe, and there was candy everywhere, and there were people dressed up in all sorts of costumes in there and around. And it was a really nice lunch actually to get to have an hour break. I'm a teacher. I get a rushed 30-minute lunch. So I had a nice talk. I had lunch with Ryan and Sarah and Katie, who will play this week. And yeah, it was a turkey sandwich and some chips. Nothing too. I didn't want anything too extravagant or rich on my stomach since I knew I was going to go back and play again. I didn't want to eat like a half a pizza, which I can sometimes do. So I just decided to keep it pretty basic.
Now, did you come up short on the value of the voucher and have them piling some of that Halloween candy on there?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But I think there was a number of king size Reese's cups on the table that just water bottles and peanut M&Ms. Yeah, exactly. It was Halloween for us too.
Mm-hmm. So, you've come back out to game number 2, Lee, and of course you did pretty. You did, I would say, you were you surprised by Alex Trebek's kind of shade, as it were, in terms of it sounded like he wanted you to bet more in Final Jeopardy.
Honestly, I didn't even catch it at the moment. I only heard it on Thursday when it was on. It didn't even register with me at the time, to be honest. So no, and I was kind of curious. Like when I saw it on the broadcast, I didn't really get what he was talking about because obviously I wasn't going to risk enough to lose the runaway. So, and I could have risked, I think, about a couple of $100 more, but yeah, I didn't even catch it at the time.
I can't say it's hard to pick up what Alex is saying sometimes at the time too. So that's something that can happen. That British cabinetry category. You were not I'm guessing you were not expecting the actual British cabinet.
I wasn't expecting it, but I was hoping for it because my knowledge of the British cabinet is much greater than my knowledge of actual literal cabinetry. So I thought we would kind of test the waters, and if it turned out to be, the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Privy Council and all that stuff, then I felt much more comfortable with it than if it were to be about, I don't know, handles and doors and china cabinets. So yeah, I was glad to find out that it was the political cabinet and not the furniture cabinet.
Yeah, definitely. Playing that one from the couch, I had a feeling that what it was going to be when I saw the category, and I had that very similar feeling. I believe I ran it.
Yeah, I think we did. I don't think there were any triple stumpers in there. I think we all.
Yep, you guys got
were,
all
were
of them.
trying to-
Well, I mean,
yeah, and you can hear the signaling devices, and I think there was a chorus of clicking on that whole category. So I think we felt pretty comfortable across the board with that one.
now, yeah, I'm just sort of quickly looking through my own stuff. On that biblical art daily double that obviously you didn't get to play, and that one actually kind of derailed Ryan's chances a bit. Did you pick up on the big, on the kind of the birth clue that Alex gave, or
The sort of Birth of Venus reference.
yeah?
I did, but I picked up on it. But I also don't know that I would have under the pressure of had I gotten that daily double. I would have been pressed to notice it in 5 seconds, but I did pick up on it just because it was no pressure, and I happen to have had seen some other Botticelli stuff. I think recently, just flipping through a book or whatever, so it was on my mind. But I think I don't think I would have picked up on the clue as much as I would have recognized the artistic style in the moment.
Now, your first two games, you did really well on the signaling device, at least compared to game number 3, as it were. Did you kind of get tired as the day went on?
No, Rachel's just that fast.
Okay.
She really is. There was and there's no excuse. Like, she's just faster than me, and all credit to her. I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel fatigued. The turkey sandwich was working well. Discomfort or anything, and no, she just beat me to the buzzer a lot of times, and credit to her for that.
Now, were you obviously you were probably a touch disappointed when the final Jeopardy clue came up and everyone went to write down their answers incredibly quickly?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, because I could hear everyone's pens go up and go down, and I knew the only shot I've got is if this is a hard question. And when I saw the question, I'm like, well, this is basically asking what's the capital of Canada, and that's way too easy for this crew. And so I heard the pens go up, I heard the pens go down. I'm like, well, 25 seconds of think music, and that's how much time I've got left in Jeopardy. So yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was hoping for a tougher clue, but I got good luck on a lot of stuff too, so I can't complain.
Yeah. So how much, how well have you kept in touch with some of your other competitors from your week?
I have. Let's see. I've been in touch with Gilbert and Rachel a good bit. Well, not a good bit, but I've been in touch with Gilbert. Actually, sent him an email today, trying to reconnect with some stuff, and then I sent Rachel sort of a pre-match congratulatory message on Friday afternoon. Watch party for Friday night, knowing that I was going to lose, but still wanted to get together with everyone, and just want to take a second and congratulate her and wish her luck going forward, because I didn't come to the taping the next day. She makes a long run and meets up with Gilbert in the Tournament of Champions. That's kind of my dream for the rest of the season, is for the two of them to clash in the final. So we kind of exchanged some messages back and forth, and she's been really lovely and very gracious winner, and hopefully she'll keep her streak alive too. Those are the two folks that I've kept up with, and actually there's a contestant a little bit later on who it turns out I knew or I know her father, and we didn't discover that until we were there. So I haven't been in touch with her, but it was kind of cool to make that connection in California.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So now was that something where they discovered that and then decided that it would be best if they held her back until the following day, or?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happened. We discovered it in on the ride over in the shuttle, and what's the odds? There's 12 people in this shuttle, and there's um, you know, we start introducing ourselves and find out that I used to not only be a colleague of her father's, but he and I used to be on a pub quiz team together a dozen years ago, um, and so when that came, and we weren't randomly drawn to play one another in the first part of the day, and then when that information kind of casually came out over lunch, they said, "Well, we need to arrange that you all don't play each other," even though we didn't know each other prior, just to cover everything's bases. So it was really cool to see him. He was there and get to catch up with an old friend that I hadn't seen in a very long time.
Well, I think that's interesting that they still at least make an effort to try to avoid that sort of a thing from happening, for sure. Even with I mean, it was a lot more, you know, back when ties were still allowed. That was something that would definitely be absolutely make sure we don't have anything like that. I mean, they still basically, I think at this point, it's more of a let's try to avoid this if at all possible, as opposed to strict avoidance, or as it were. But
yeah, and I guess if I had gone on some massive streak, they may have just said, "Well, you're going to play anyways, and we'll deal with it." But I didn't, so it didn't come up, and she'll play sometime this week, I think.
Okay.
That was what they did with I believe it was Alex Jacob and Scott Blish back during his run, and I believe looking at J Archive, Scott was drawn to play in Alex's sixth game, which was on a Friday,
Right.
and they knew each other from Learned League.
Uh,
Well, they'd known each
So
other
I've never,
from they'd known each other from, I believe they knew each other from poker, actually. They were both professional
Okay.
poker players at the same time.
Hmm.
So that was kind of, I believe that was how they knew each other. But yeah, my next question's for Lee. How different is it watching Jeopardy now compared to before you taped? Like, what differences are there now that you've been a contestant, now that you've been in studio, seen how everything's worked?
uh, I now know why people just beat the hell out of the buzzer. I know why they make faces and get upset at the buzzer, because it is super fickle and frustrating. And I just thought they were, mad and taking out their aggression, and maybe they were, but I kept my buzzer down low, but the aggression was there nonetheless. So I certainly have a lot more empathy for that, and it's also kind of cool for the production side, just to notice what's going on. And Alex is doing his little dance behind the board sometimes when he's ready to come out, or getting a glimpse of some of the crew that you got to know is kind of cool. And how quickly it really turns around, was probably the biggest surprise for me. Just one episode to the next, to the next, to the next, other than the lunch break, it's really a 10-minute turnaround. So like understanding how quickly, the champ's got to change clothes and touch up the makeup and grab a snack and drink something and come back out, and then Alex is changing clothes, and the other two people are just getting literally drawn out of a hat, and they're coming in, just like the sort of hustle and bustle to then get ready again. So just having that, it's fun, it's cool, and I certainly have more empathy for the buzzer frustration, but I think that's pretty universal for most anyone who's played.
Well, that's good to know, and certainly I would say you're not alone in the empathy subject, on the empathy topic either. So a lot of former contestants, once they've been up there, realize, that it's a lot different than it seems on television sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of it was such a blur. I mean, when my episodes were about to air, I'd forgotten probably 70% of the clues that were up there. I remember scattered bits. I remember muffing Lisbon and Portugal. I remember my brain freezing on I did it again on Manny Ramirez. Even though I could see his face and I could see the literal fight with Kevin Youkilis in the dugout happening, I couldn't get the name Fernandez out of my head. It was an obscure wrestler from the '80s in my childhood, and so I have a lot more empathy for that too. But yeah, just the idea of how it all kind of comes together. It's more sort of just kind of cool to know and watch and to root for people and to know that everyone that I interacted with was really great, and the Jeopardy people and my fellow contestants just. Everyone was really lovely and pleasant to be around, and it was just a fun day, regardless of the outcomes.
Yeah, that Ramirez clue was one that happened to be just right in my wheelhouse because I attended his last game with the Red Sox, Fenway, right before the trade deadline in 2008. So that was right there for me. And also just thinking about, you said it, talk about muffin clues, and thinking about, it's been said that putting a camera or a microphone in someone's face causes their IQ to potentially drop 10 points. I know Andy has said that, and it just makes me think that hopefully I'm looking forward to putting that to the test tomorrow night when I take complete the list with him.
Nice.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, and it's I was lucky that the clues that I muffed didn't end up mattering, either way. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm unfortunate with that.
So, what else did you do when you went out to Culver City? What other things in Los Angeles did you partake in? Now, I can't remember. Was it still had the temperature dropped in LA at that point? Because I remember the week prior it was like 100 degrees.
The week prior was really hot, and I was not looking forward to that because our summer here lasted forever. So I went out. I went on the 20th. My tape day was going to be 31st or the 1st. It ended up being the 31st of October. So I went out on the 29th to go out a day early. My 40th birthday was on the 30th, so I turned 40 the day before my tape day, which was really fun. And I had some fun stuff happen. My first night there, I was able to catch dinner with a former student who was working for LA Times, and had a great meal and great time catching up with her. And then on my birthday, I have an old college buddy who's a sound engineer in LA, and he's from there and he's lived out there for a while. And so we just kind of spent my birthday hanging out and going to lunch and hanging out at his house and going up to the Hollywood Hills and taking a hike and going to the observatory. And her and her husband were in town, so the four of us got Thai food on my birthday for dinner the night before the taping, which was really nice. And it was a great way to spend my 40th birthday. And then the tape day was a lot of fun, and got back to the hotel. The tape day was Game 6 of the World Series, so my plan was, I was so still sort of amped up from the game that I just changed clothes and went to the gym for an hour just to get my energy out. Said I'm just going to go to the gym and kind of work off this energy, and I'm going to eat a pizza and watch baseball. And pizza was awful, but whatever. I'm picky about pizza. But I said whoever will deliver to Sepulveda Avenue is what I'll eat. Watched the game the next day. I was able to catch up with another former student who works in the film industry, and he met me for breakfast, and we had a great time. And it's really cool for me to be able to have the opportunity to catch up with people who I haven't seen in 5-10 years, and spend some time with them out there. So it was a pretty ideal visit all the way around. And then I came back here on Thursday and back to school on Friday morning. And I had to keep quiet for 2.5 months.
Well, still not as long as some people have had to keep quiet this season, since there were some April tapings that they got aired in like September. So, did Alex Trebek in the interviews talk to you about what you thought he'd talk to you about?
Yes. So the really long questionnaire survey that you send back to Sony a few weeks before you tape, they sort of use that and they cull it down to a note card that's got 3 bullet points on it. And they kind of go over that with you during your 3 hours of pre-show stuff. And they kind of make sure that they're still okay to talk about. And they ask you if there's any one that you really are eager to talk about. And if so, they highlight it. And then they get those cards to Alex. And so that's what he's looking at is those 3 bullet points on the card, and one of them may or may not be highlighted or indicated for him to talk about. Otherwise, he's just gonna So yeah, I knew what he was gonna. I knew of the three things he was gonna talk about.
Okay. So Matt, did you have any questions you'd like to ask Lee?
Um, Not a question for Lee, but just a general comment. We know that this past week Alex Trebek returned to taping episodes, and I wanted to point out for anyone who's listening tonight the incredibly stirring and moving uh, YouTube video that Jeopardy shared on through its official channels that was composed and edited by Jennifer Morrow, who played 3 seasons ago. And it's just a 4.5, 5-minute montage of well wishes, just get well soon from players. I think as far back as like season 3, back in the mid 80s, and the fact all the way through to some players that I think have not even yet appeared this season. And I first saw that. It was first brought to my attention at work on Wednesday afternoon, and as soon as I saw it come up in my Twitter feed, I'm like, I cannot look at this at work. I've got to, you know, I work in a nuclear power plant. I gotta maintain, keep it serious. I don't want to lose my composure here. But between when I got home and when the start of Wednesday night's game, I checked it out, and I believe Andy said, I dare you to not cry watching this, and I came pretty close. Definitely, there were tears in my eyes as I did. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Jennifer for putting that together, to thank all the contestants who responded to her call and came together, and in many cases, a lot of them coming together personally to wish Alex well, and also particularly to the show also for putting that out. You know, it's that even though it's not something that was produced by the show per se. It's a piece of, I guess you could say, user generated content, but the fact that they chose to share it with all of us is a credit to them, a credit to everyone who appeared on it, and particularly a credit to Jennifer for bringing it all together. So thank you to everybody there.
And I just want to add my own thanks to that, to Jennifer for sure. Also, I'm going to say I'm also going to give some credit to Susan Herder, who also was, while not credited on the video itself, was also instrumental in putting that, getting a lot of people together for that, and did a lot of the behind the scenes work with the video as well. And one thing I also think, after this, at my audition back in November, when Jeopardy Live panel actually came up in my audition, I spoke about it, and Maggie flat out asked me who my favorite interview was. And I think that, after I saw the video, I thought, I'm 100%, it just cemented the fact that in the interview, I said that Jennifer Morrow had been my favorite interview of all time. And I think just how great of a person she is, I think just that seeing the video cemented that with me in terms of just how awesome she is for the community. And I just wanted to put that out there as well. Okay, so is there anything you thought I'd bring up tonight but didn't, or any questions you have for either one of us? Or anyone else on the panel, as it were? I don't hear anything, so from that perspective, I would like to thank and congratulate once again Lee on your 2 wins last week. Well done. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And I'd
Thanks
also
very
like to
much.
and I'd also like to thank Matt for joining me on tonight's panel as well.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Appreciate it.
Okay, so here on hashtag Jeopardy Live panel, I hope you enjoy the new kind of broadcast graphics, as it were, if you were tuning in. I know it sounds like there was some buffering at the start on the stream. I do apologize for that. I am still trying to work out the kinks. Overall, I think this will work out better, and I'll keep, trying to improve things as we go. So for my panel, Lee and Matt, I am Andy Saunders. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. I'll be back with another panel next Monday night at 9:15 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for joining us, for joining the panel. Have a great night.